The massive Xerion Imperial Command Station hung in space like a metal moon. Its dark surface was covered with thousands of lights that blinked in patterns only the aliens could understand. The station was bigger than most human cities and protected, the capital world of the Xerion Empire. Nothing was supposed to get close to it without permission. Admiral HFY stood on the main bridge, his 6 arms crossed behind his back. His blue-scaled skin reflected the glow from dozens of control screens. The Xerion commander had spent 40 years protecting the Empire. He had never lost a battle. He had never let an enemy ship get past his defenses. Today would be different. The bridge was quiet except for the soft humming of machines. Hundreds of Xerion officers worked at their stations, watching screens that showed empty space in all directions. Everything looked normal. Everything looked safe. Then the alarm started screaming. Lieutenant Vorrex jumped from his chair, his 4 eyes wide with shock. "Admiral, we have a contact." HFY moved quickly to the sensor station. His clawed hands gripped the metal rail as he stared at the screen. "Where did it come from?" "I don't know, sir. It just appeared on our screens. No warning. No trace of how it got here." The screen showed a small dot of light sitting in space only 50,000 kilometers from the command station. In space terms, that was like having someone standing in your bedroom without knowing how they got inside your house. "What type of ship is it?" HFY demanded. Vorrex worked frantically at his controls. "Running identification scan now. Sir, it's human." The word human made every Xerion on the bridge stop what they were doing. Humans were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to be far away fighting small battles on distant worlds. They were not supposed to be here in the heart of the Empire. How is that possible? HFY's voice was barely a whisper. The human ship sat in space like it belonged. There. It was smaller than most Xerion vessels, painted dark gray with strange markings on its hull. The ship looked peaceful, but its presence was the most terrifying thing any of them had ever seen. Far away on the human destroyer USS Liberty, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair and smiled. Everything was going exactly as planned. "Nice work, Lisa," he said to the woman sitting at the engineering station. "Your stealth system worked perfectly." Lisa Rodriguez looked up from her screens and grinned. "Told you it would work, Captain. We've been sitting here for 3 hours and they never saw us coming." The Liberty's bridge was much smaller than the Xerion command station, but it felt warm and alive. The crew of 30 humans had been preparing for this mission for months. They knew the risks. They knew they might not make it home. But they also knew how important this mission was for Earth and all of humanity. "Ryan, what's their response?" Morrison asked his tactical officer. Ryan Cooper studied his instruments. "They're going crazy, sir. I'm reading massive energy spikes from their command station. They're powering up weapons and calling for backup." "Amy, are you picking up their communications?" Communication specialist Amy Watson nodded as she listened to her headphones. "Yes, sir. They're speaking in their own language, but the computer is translating. They're asking each other how we got here. They sound scared." Morrison felt a surge of satisfaction. The mission was already a success, and they had barely started. Dr. Ben Taylor, the ship's science officer, looked up from his station. "Captain, I'm reading at least 50 Xerion warships in this system. More are jumping in every minute." "Let them come," Morrison said calmly. "We're not here to fight. We're here to learn." Back on the command station, Admiral HFY was trying to understand what had happened. His best officers were running every test they could think of, but none of them had answers. "Sir," said Chief Intelligence Officer Zarnex, "we've checked our records going back 6 months. There is no trace of this ship anywhere in our sensor logs. It's like it materialized out of nothing." HFY's claws scraped against the metal rail. "Ships don't just appear from nothing. Run a full system diagnostic. Check every sensor, every scanner, every piece of equipment we have." "Already running, sir. All systems show normal operation." The Admiral stared at the human ship on his screen. It wasn't moving. It wasn't threatening them. It was just sitting there, as if it had every right to be in the most protected space in the entire Empire. "How long have they been there?" he asked quietly. Tsar next checked his instruments again. Unknown, sir. They could have been there for minutes or hours, we have no way of knowing. The implications were terrifying. If humans could sneak past every defense the Empire had, what else could they do? How many other ships might be out there, invisible and watching? Sir, Vorrex called out. We're receiving a transmission from the Imperial Council. They want to speak with you immediately. Kethvar closed his eyes for a moment. The Council was not going to be happy about this. In 40 years of service, he had never had to explain how an enemy ship had appeared in the heart of the Empire without anyone noticing. Put them through, he said. The main screen flickered and showed the faces of 12 Council members. Each one looked angry and worried. Admiral, said Counselor Hex Prime, explain to us how a human warship is currently sitting 50,000 kilometers from our capital world. I am investigating the situation, Counselor. My officers are working to determine how this occurred. Your officers? Hex Prime's voice rose. Admiral, this represents the greatest security failure in the history of our empire. How do we know there aren't 100 more human ships hiding in our space? Kethvar had no answer for that question. The truth was, they didn't know. For all they knew, human ships could be everywhere, watching everything, reporting back to Earth about Xerian weaknesses and defenses. On the Liberty, Captain Morrison watched as more Xerian ships appeared on his screens. The alien fleet was growing larger every minute, but he wasn't worried. Lisa's stealth technology had gotten them this far. It would get them home. Captain, Amy said, I'm picking up transmissions between the Xerian ships. They're forming a perimeter around us, but they're not attacking. They're afraid, Morrison realized. They don't know what we're capable of. They're wondering if we're alone or if this is the beginning of something bigger. He was right. Throughout the Xerian fleet, commanders were asking the same questions. How had the humans done this? What did they want? And most importantly, what were they going to do next? 3 hours had passed since the human ship appeared, and the Xerion Empire was in chaos. Admiral Kethvar paced back and forth on his bridge while his officers worked frantically at their stations. The human destroyer still sat in the same spot, unmoving and silent. Chief Intelligence Officer Tsar Nex had not left his station since the crisis began. His 4 hands moved quickly across multiple control panels as he searched through months of sensor data. Sweat dripped from his scaled forehead despite the cool air on the bridge. Anything? Kethvar asked for the 10th time in an hour. Nothing. Admiral, I have reviewed every sensor log for the past 6 months. There is no record of any ship entering our space. No energy signatures, no gravitational disturbances, no communication signals. It is as if this human vessel simply did not exist until 3 hours ago. Kethvar stopped pacing and stared at the main screen. The human ship looked so small compared to his massive warships, yet it had accomplished something impossible. What about our patrol ships? Surely someone must have seen something. Lieutenant Vorrex looked up from his communication station. Sir, I have contacted every patrol in the outer system. None of them report any unusual activity. Commander Jextor, of the patrol fleet, says his ships have been running standard sweeps for weeks with no contacts. The Admiral felt a cold fear growing in his chest. If the humans could make their ships invisible to every sensor and every patrol, what else could they do? Were there human ships watching other Xerian worlds right now? On the Imperial capital. World below, emergency meetings were taking place in every government building. The news of the security breach had spread quickly through the high command, and panic was setting in. Counselor Hex Prime stood before a room full of military leaders and government officials. His voice echoed off the marble walls as he spoke. This incident represents a complete failure of our defensive systems. We have spent centuries building the most advanced detection network in the galaxy, and a single human ship has made it worthless. General Keckstorm, commander of the Home Defense Fleet, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Counselor, perhaps this was just luck. One ship getting through does not mean our entire defense grid has failed. One ship? Hex Prime's voice rose to a shout. General, this one ship has done what entire enemy fleets could not do. It has reached our capital world without being detected. How do we explain this to the outer colonies? How do we tell them they are safe when we cannot even protect our own capital? The room fell silent. Everyone understood the implications. If word of this security failure spread throughout the Empire, worlds might start to question whether the Zerion military could protect them. Some might even consider breaking away from the Empire entirely. Meanwhile, aboard the USS Liberty, Captain Morrison and his crew were busy gathering intelligence. The ship's advanced sensors were recording everything they could see, from the layout of the Zerion fleet to the energy signatures of their weapons. Dr. Ben Taylor worked at his science station, analyzing the data flowing into the ship's computers. "Captain, this is incredible. I'm getting detailed scans of their ship designs, their weapon systems, even their communication frequencies." "How long until we have everything we need?" Morrison asked. "At this rate, maybe 2 more hours, but Captain, you should see what I'm picking up from their communications. They're calling in ships from all over the system. I count over 200 vessels heading this way." Morrison nodded calmly. He had expected this reaction. "Amy, what are they saying about us?" Communications specialist Amy Watson listened carefully to the translated Zerion chatter. "Sir, they're asking a lot of questions they can't answer. How did we get here? Are there more of us? What do we want? Some of their commanders are suggesting we might have some kind of new technology they've never seen before." "Which is exactly right," said Lisa Rodriguez from her engineering station. "Captain, my stealth system is working better than I hoped. They're trying every type of scan they have, but we're still invisible to most of their sensors." Ryan Cooper looked up from his tactical display. "Captain, I'm seeing something interesting in their fleet formations. They're not just surrounding us. They're pulling ships back from their outer patrols to defend the capital. This one little encounter is affecting their entire defense strategy." Morrison smiled. This was better than they had hoped for. Not only were they gathering valuable intelligence, but their mere presence was forcing the Zerion Empire to weaken its defenses elsewhere. Back on the command station, Admiral Kethvar was receiving reports that made his situation even worse. Ships were arriving from across the system, but each new arrival brought more questions than answers. "Admiral," said Commander Yexnal from the heavy cruiser Dominator, "my sensors show no trace of how this human ship arrived. We have been patrolling the outer system for weeks. Nothing got past us." "Then how is it here?" Kethvar demanded. "Unknown, sir. My science officer suggests the humans may have developed some form of advanced stealth technology, but we have no records of them having such capabilities." Kethvar cut the communication and turned to Zarnex. "What do our intelligence files say about human technology?" The intelligence officer called up files on his screen. "Our records show humans using basic stealth systems, but nothing approaching this level of sophistication. According to our last reports, human ships are primitive compared to our own." "Then our intelligence is wrong," Kethvar said grimly. "Send a message to all intelligence stations throughout the Empire. I want every piece of information we have about human technology reviewed immediately." As the hours passed, the crisis continued to grow. More ships arrived to surround the human vessel, but none of the Zerion commanders wanted to be the first to fire. What if attacking this ship brought down the wrath of the entire human fleet? What if there were other human ships nearby waiting to strike? The psychological impact was spreading beyond the military. On the capital world, citizens were beginning to hear rumors about a security breach. Some were asking questions about whether their government could really protect them from enemies who could appear anywhere without warning. In the Imperial Council chambers, emergency sessions continued around the clock. Counselor Hex Prime found himself fielding calls from governors of outer colonies who had heard whispers about the incident. "Counselor," said Governor Tex Mora of the mining world Kepler 7, "we are hearing disturbing reports about a security failure at the capital. Our people are asking if they should prepare for human attacks." "The situation is under control, Governor," Hex Prime replied, though he did not feel confident about his words. "Under control? We have reports that a human warship is sitting in orbit around the capital world. How is that under control?" Hex Prime ended the call without answering. The truth was, they had no control over the situation at all. A single human ship had shaken the foundations of the entire empire, and no one knew what to do about it. Aboard the Liberty, Captain Morrison watched the growing Zerion fleet on his screens. The aliens were scared, confused, and making mistakes. Everything was going according to plan. Dr. Taylor, how much more data do you need? Just a little more, Captain. This intelligence will change everything. Earth Command is going to be very interested in what we've learned about Zerion defensive weaknesses. Morrison nodded. Soon it would be time to leave, but their mission was already a complete success. They had proven that human ingenuity could overcome any obstacle, even the defenses of a galactic empire. Admiral Kethvar stood on his bridge and stared at the human ship on his main screen. 6 hours had passed since it first appeared, and his fleet had grown to over 300 vessels. Every ship had weapons powered and ready to fire, but still, no one dared to shoot first. The Admiral's hands shook slightly as he reached for the communication controls. He had made his decision. It was time to speak directly to the humans. Open a channel to the human vessel, he ordered. Lieutenant Vorex worked at his station for a moment, then looked up. Channel open, sir. Kethvar took a deep breath. In all his years of military service, he had never felt so uncertain about what to say. Human vessel, this is Admiral Kethvar of the Zerion Imperial Fleet. You have entered restricted space without permission. Explain your presence here immediately. On the bridge of the USS Liberty, Captain Morrison heard the alien voice coming through the translation system. The computer turned the harsh Zerion language into clear English words, though it could not hide the fear and anger in the Admiral's tone. Morrison looked around at his crew. Lisa Rodriguez gave him a thumbs up from her engineering station. Ryan Cooper nodded from tactical. Amy Watson smiled and pointed to her headphones, indicating she was ready to record everything. This should be interesting, Morrison said quietly, then activated his own communication system. Admiral Kethvar, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Liberty. We are conducting peaceful observations in what we consider to be neutral space. The words hit the Zerion bridge like a lightning bolt. Peaceful observations, neutral space. The human captain spoke as if he had every right to be there. Kethvar felt his temper rising. Captain Morrison, you are in the heart of the Zerion Empire, 50,000 kilometers from our capital world. This is not neutral space. This is our most protected territory. Morrison's voice came back calm and steady. Admiral, Earth does not recognize Zerion territorial claims in this region. We are simply exercising our right to free navigation. The Zerion officers on the bridge looked at each other in shock. Free navigation? This human was talking as if his tiny ship had the same rights as the entire Zerion fleet. Captain Morrison, Kethvar said, his voice getting louder, you are surrounded by 300 of our finest warships. You are outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender now, and we may show mercy. There was a pause before Morrison replied. When he did, his voice was still completely calm. Admiral, I appreciate your concern for our safety. However, the Liberty is a peaceful research vessel. We have no intention of surrendering to anyone. Dr. Ben Taylor looked up from his science station and whispered to Morrison, Captain, they're scanning us with everything they have. Active sensors, weapons targeting systems, the works. Morrison nodded and spoke into his microphone again. Admiral, we are detecting multiple targeting scans from your vessels. Please be advised that we consider such actions to be hostile in nature. Kethvar almost laughed. Hostile? This single human ship was calling his actions hostile while sitting uninvited in the middle of his fleet? Captain Morrison, you will power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with force. Morrison looked at his crew again. Lisa was working frantically at her engineering controls, making sure their stealth systems were ready for anything. Ryan had his hands on the weapons console, though they all knew their single ship could not fight 300 alien vessels. Admiral, Morrison said, the Liberty is a sovereign vessel of Earth. We do not recognize your authority to board us. We suggest you maintain a respectful distance while we complete our observations. The communication channel went quiet for a long moment. On the Zerion command station, Admiral Kethvar stared at his officers in disbelief. Did he just tell us to maintain a respectful distance? He asked. Zarnex nodded slowly. Yes, sir. The human captain is acting as if his single ship is equal to our entire fleet. Kethvar turned back to the communication system. Captain Morrison, you seem to misunderstand your situation. You are completely surrounded. Your ship cannot possibly escape. Morrison's reply came quickly. Admiral, I think you may be the one who misunderstands the situation. The fact that we are here having a conversation should tell you something about our capabilities. Those words sent a chill through every Xerion on the bridge. The human was right. If they could appear here without being detected, what else could they do? On the capital world below, the Imperial Council was watching the conversation through live communication feeds. Counselor Hex Prime pounded his fist on the conference table. This is intolerable. A single human is making demands of our entire fleet. What do you want us to do? Asked General Keckstorm. If we attack and destroy this ship, we might provoke a war with Earth. But if we let them go, we look weak to the entire galaxy. Counselor Vex Dira, the oldest member of the council, spoke quietly. Perhaps we should ask ourselves why they are really here. This captain is too calm, too confident. He knows something we do not. Back in space, the standoff continued. Admiral Kethvar decided to try a different approach. Captain Morrison, what exactly are you observing in our space? We are studying the movement patterns of Xerion military vessels, Admiral. Your fleet formations are quite interesting from a tactical perspective. The honesty of the answer surprised Kethvar. The human was admitting to spying on them, but he said it as if it were perfectly normal. You admit to conducting espionage against the Xerion Empire? I prefer to call it scientific research, Admiral. Earth is always interested in learning about other cultures and their military traditions. Ryan Cooper had to cover his mouth to keep from laughing. The captain was being polite while basically telling the aliens that humans were studying them like insects. Kethvar was growing more frustrated by the minute. Captain, this conversation is over. You have 1 hour to leave our space or we will open fire. Morrison paused for a moment as if considering the threat. Admiral, I understand your position. However, threatening Earth vessels is not something we take lightly. I suggest you reconsider your approach. Are you threatening us, Captain? Not at all, Admiral. I am simply pointing out that actions have consequences. Earth has a long memory when it comes to threats against our people. The words were spoken calmly, but they carried an unmistakable message. The human was not afraid of the Xerion fleet. In fact, he seemed to be warning them. Kethvar ended the communication and turned to his officers. Options? Zarnex spoke first. Sir, if we attack this ship, we must assume Earth will retaliate. But we have no idea what form that retaliation might take. If we let them go, added Vorrex, every enemy of the Empire will know that a single ship can penetrate our defenses and leave safely. Commander Yexnal's voice came over the fleet communication system. Admiral, this is the Dominator. We have the human ship targeted and ready to fire on your command. Kethvar stared at the main screen. The human ship still sat motionless in space, surrounded by hundreds of Xerion warships. It should have been the easiest target in the galaxy, but somehow it felt like the most dangerous. On the Liberty, Captain Morrison watched the alien fleet through his own screens. He could see weapons powering up on dozens of ships. The next few minutes would determine whether this mission ended in success or disaster. Lisa, are we ready to move if we need to? Ready when you are, Captain. Just say the word. Morrison nodded and opened the communication channel one more time. Admiral Kethvar, the Liberty will be departing shortly. Thank you for your hospitality. The casual tone of the message was like a slap in the face to every Xerion listening. The human captain was thanking them for their hospitality while surrounded by their entire fleet. Amy Watson pressed her headphones closer to her ears and listened carefully to the Xerion communications. What she was hearing made her eyes grow wide with surprise. Captain Morrison, she whispered urgently, you need to hear this. Morrison moved quickly to her station. What is it? Amy adjusted her controls and put the conversation on the bridge speakers. The translation computer turned the alien words into English, and what they heard was shocking. Governor Tex Mora is demanding answers from the capital, Amy explained. He says his people are scared and asking if they should prepare for human attacks. But listen to this next part. The voice of another Xerian governor came through the hall speakers. If the Empire cannot protect the capital world, how can they protect us? Perhaps it is time to consider our options. Morrison looked around at his crew. They were all staring at the speakers in amazement. Captain, Dr. Ben Taylor said, quietly, I think our little visit is causing bigger problems than we expected. Amy continued monitoring the communications. Sir, I'm picking up at least 6 different colony governors talking about the security failure. Some of them are using words like independence and separate defense agreements. Morrison felt a surge of excitement. Their mission was supposed to gather intelligence about Xerion military capabilities. Instead, they had accidentally triggered a political crisis that was tearing the Empire apart. Ryan Cooper looked up from his tactical station. Captain, I'm seeing something else interesting. Look at how they've positioned their fleet around us. Morrison studied the tactical display that Ryan was showing him. The Xerian ships were arranged in a perfect defensive formation, but there was something wrong with it. What am I looking at, Ryan? Sir, this formation looks impressive, but it has a major weakness. See how they've clustered their heavy cruisers here and here? If an attacking force came from this direction, Ryan pointed to a spot on the screen, they could break through with minimal losses. Dr. Taylor moved over to look at the display. Ryan's right, Captain. I've been analyzing their ship movements for hours, and their defensive patterns are all wrong. They're designed to look threatening, but they're not designed to actually stop a real attack. Lisa Rodriguez spun around in her chair. Are you saying the mighty Xerian Empire doesn't know how to arrange their own fleet? That's exactly what I'm saying, Ryan replied. Their individual ships are powerful, but they don't know how to use them together effectively. Morrison realized they had stumbled onto something huge. Not only were the Xerians afraid of human technology, but their military tactics were flawed. This information could change the entire balance of power between Earth and the Empire. Meanwhile, on the Xerion command station, Admiral Kethvar was dealing with his own revelations. Reports were flooding in from across the Empire, and none of them were good. Admiral, said Zarnax, I have disturbing news from our intelligence network. Several colony worlds are requesting emergency defense meetings. They want to discuss what they call alternative security arrangements. Kethvar felt his heart sink. Alternative security arrangements meant the colonies were thinking about breaking away from the Empire. How many worlds are we talking about? At least 12 so far, sir. More are expected to join them. Lieutenant Vorrex looked up from his communication station. Admiral, I'm receiving a priority message from Counselor Hex Prime. He wants to speak with you immediately. The main screen flickered and showed the angry face of the counselor. Behind him, Kethvar could see other council members arguing loudly. Admiral, explain to me how this situation has gotten so far out of control. Hex Prime demanded. Counselor, we are managing the immediate threat. The human ship is still surrounded. Managing? Admiral, half the Empire is questioning our ability to defend them. We have reports of colony worlds discussing independence. This is a disaster. Kethvar had no good answer. One human ship had done more damage to the Empire in 8 hours than enemy fleets had accomplished in years of warfare. What are your orders, Counselor? Hex Prime looked tired and defeated. End this situation, Admiral. I don't care how you do it, but end it now before we lose any more colonies. The communication ended, leaving Kethvar alone with his impossible task. If he attacked the human ship, he might start a war with Earth. If he let it go, he would look weak and lose even more colonies. On the Liberty, Captain Morrison was studying the intelligence they had gathered. Dr. Taylor had compiled detailed information about Xerion ship designs, weapon systems, and defensive strategies. Captain, this is incredible, Dr. Taylor said. Their ships are powerful, but they're designed for intimidation rather than actual combat. Look at these weapon placements. Morrison examined the data on Dr. Taylor's screen. What am I seeing? Their main guns are positioned to look impressive, but they have huge blind spots. A smaller, faster ship could exploit these weaknesses easily. Lisa Rodriguez laughed. So the big bad Xerian Empire builds ships that look scary but can't actually Fight very well? That's about right, Dr. Taylor confirmed. And their fleet formations are even worse. They're using parade formations in combat situations. Morrison realized that Earth had been overestimating Xerian military capabilities for years. The Empire looked powerful from the outside, but it was built on fear and intimidation rather than actual strength. Amy, what else are you hearing from their communications? Amy listened for a moment, then shook her head. Captain, it's getting worse for them. I'm now picking up communications from at least 20 colony worlds. They're all asking the same questions about Empire security. Ryan Cooper pulled up another tactical display. Captain, look at this. They've been moving ships from their outer colonies to surround us here. That means their border defenses are weaker than they've been in decades. Morrison saw the bigger picture now. Their reconnaissance mission had not just gathered intelligence about Xerian capabilities. It had also exposed fundamental weaknesses in the Empire's structure and revealed that many colonies were ready to break away if given the right opportunity. Dr. Taylor, how much of this intelligence can we compress and transmit to Earth? All of it, Captain. But the transmission will take about 10 minutes to complete, and they'll definitely detect it. Morrison made his decision. Do it. Send everything. We've learned back to Earth Command. They need to know that the Xerian Empire is not as strong as we thought. As Dr. Taylor began preparing the data transmission, Morrison looked around at his crew. They had accomplished something amazing. A single ship with 30 humans had shaken the foundations of a galactic empire. The transmission began, sending terabytes of intelligence data across space toward Earth. The information included detailed analysis of Xerion ship designs, defensive, formations, political weaknesses, and colony locations. On the command station, Lieutenant Vorek suddenly sat up straight. Admiral, the human ship is transmitting. Massive data burst heading toward Earth space. Kethvar stared at the screen in horror. The humans had been gathering intelligence the entire time, and now they were sending it home. Everything the Liberty had learned about Xerion weaknesses was on its way to Earth. Can we stop the transmission? No, sir. It's using a tight beam laser communication system. We cannot interfere with it. Admiral Kethvar realized that his worst fears had come true. The humans had not just penetrated Xerion space. They had studied the Empire's defenses, discovered its weaknesses, and were now sharing that information with their homeworld. The single human ship had accomplished what an entire invasion fleet could not have done. It had gathered intelligence that could change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Morrison watched the transmission progress on his screen. In a few minutes, Earth would know everything about Xerion capabilities and weaknesses. The war, if it came, would be very different from what anyone expected. Transmission complete, Captain, Dr. Taylor reported. Morrison nodded. Excellent work, everyone. Now let's go home. Captain Morrison stood up from his command chair and looked around at his crew. The data transmission to Earth was complete. Now came the most dangerous part of their mission. Lisa, are you ready to get us out of here? Lisa Rodriguez's hands moved quickly over her engineering controls. Stealth systems at maximum power, Captain. I've been saving energy for this moment all day. Ryan, plot us an escape course through their fleet. Ryan Cooper studied his tactical display, looking for the best path through the hundreds of Xerion ships surrounding them. Captain, I've found a route. It goes right between their heavy cruisers, but if we move fast enough, they won't be able to target us. Admiral Kethvar watched the human ship on his main screen. Something had changed. The small vessel that had been sitting motionless for hours was now showing signs of activity. Sir, said Lieutenant Vorek, the human ship is powering up its engines. All ships, prepare to fire, Kethvar ordered. If they try to run, destroy them. The order went out to over 300 Xerion warships. Thousands of weapons turned toward the Liberty, ready to fire the moment it moved. Morrison activated the ship's communication system one last time. Admiral Kethvar, this is Captain Morrison. Thank you for an educational visit. The Liberty is now departing. Captain Morrison, if you attempt to leave, we will open fire. Morrison's voice came back calm and confident. Admiral, I would not recommend that course of action. Earth does not forget attacks on our vessels. Kethvar was tired of the humans' arrogance. Fire at will, all ships engage. What happened next would be talked about in Xerian military academies for years to come. The Liberty suddenly accelerated at impossible speed, moving faster than any ship the Xerians had ever seen. Lisa's stealth system made the ship flicker in and out of visibility like a ghost. "I can't get a lock," shouted the weapons officer on the heavy cruiser Dominator. "Target lost," reported another ship. "Where did it go?" came panicked voices from across the Xerion fleet. Ryan Cooper's escape plan was working perfectly. The Liberty weaved between the alien ships so quickly that their targeting systems could not keep up. The Xerion fleet was so tightly packed that they were afraid to fire at full power, worried they might hit their own ships. "Captain," Lisa called out, "stealth systems holding steady. They can see us for maybe 2 seconds at a time, then we disappear again." Dr. Ben Taylor watched his instruments as the Liberty raced through the enemy fleet. Amazing. Their targeting computers are completely confused. They're not designed to track something this fast and this stealthy. The Xerion ships tried desperately to catch the escaping human vessel. Energy beams fired in all directions, but the Liberty was always somewhere else by the time the weapons reached their target.
"This is impossible," Admiral Kethvar shouted. 300 ships cannot catch one small vessel. But it was happening. The Liberty danced through the Xerion fleet like it was flying through empty space. Every time the aliens thought they had
it targeted, the ship would vanish from their sensors and appear somewhere else. Amy Watson listened to the chaos on the Xerion communication channels. "Captain, they're starting to hit each other. 2 of their ships just collided trying to intercept us." Morrison smiled grimly. The enemy's own size and numbers were working against them. With so many ships packed into a small area, they were getting in each other's way. "Ryan, how much farther to open space?" 30 seconds, Captain. We're almost through their outer perimeter." The Liberty shot between 2 massive Xerion battleships, missing them by only a few meters. The alien gunners fired frantically, but their beams struck empty space where the human ship had been moments before. Commander Yexnal on the Dominator watched in horror as the small human vessel flew past his ship. He fired every weapon he had, but none of them found their target. "How are they doing this?" he asked his officers. "Unknown, sir. It's like they can see our targeting systems and know exactly where we're going to fire." That was not far from the truth. Dr. Taylor was analyzing the Xerion weapon systems in real time, predicting where they would fire, and telling Ryan Cooper how to avoid them. Suddenly, the Liberty burst through the outer edge of the Xerion fleet and into open space. The alien ships tried to pursue, but the human vessel was already too far away and moving too fast. "We're clear," Ryan announced. Morrison felt a wave of relief wash over him. "Excellent work, everyone. Lisa, take us home." Lisa engaged the ships, faster than light drive, and the Liberty disappeared into the void between stars. On the command station, Admiral Kethvar stared at his empty screen in defeat. The human ship was gone, and there was nothing he could do about it. "Sir," said Zarnex quietly, "what do we tell the Imperial Council?" Kethvar closed his eyes. How could he explain that his entire fleet had been unable to stop one small ship? How could he tell them that the humans had gathered intelligence about every weakness in the Empire's defenses? "Tell them the truth," he said finally. "Tell them we are dealing with an enemy far more dangerous than we ever imagined." The escape of the Liberty sent shockwaves throughout the Xerion Empire. Within hours, news of the incident had spread to every corner of their territory. On the mining world of Kepler 7, Governor Tex Mora called an emergency meeting of his planetary council. If a single human ship can penetrate the capital's defenses and escape safely, what does that say about our security? He asked. One of his advisors stood up. "Governor, perhaps it is time to consider defensive agreements with other colonies. The Empire clearly cannot protect us." Similar conversations were taking place on dozens of worlds. The psychological impact of the Liberty's mission was spreading like wildfire. 3 days later, Captain Morrison stood in the briefing room at Earth Command headquarters. Admiral Kate Williams, the head of Earth's military forces, studied the intelligence reports on her tablet. "Captain, this information changes everything," she said. The Zarian Empire is not nearly as strong as we thought. No, Admiral. Their ships are powerful, but their tactics are flawed. More importantly, their political structure is fragile. Our single reconnaissance mission has already caused at least 15 colonies to question their loyalty to the Empire. Admiral Williams smiled. Captain, you and your crew have accomplished something remarkable. You've proven that human ingenuity can overcome any obstacle. Morrison thought about his 30-person crew and their small ship. They had faced down an entire galactic empire and won without firing a single shot. Admiral, the Liberty's mission has shown us something important. We don't need to match the Zarion ship for ship. We just need to be smarter, faster, and more adaptable than they are. Admiral Williams nodded. Those are lessons we can apply to our entire fleet. Captain, prepare for your next mission. Based on what you've learned, we're going to visit a few more Zarion systems. Morrison smiled. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity was not the weak species the aliens thought they were. 1 week later, Admiral Kethvar received reports that changed everything. 3 more human ships had been detected in different parts of the Empire. Each one had appeared without warning, gathered intelligence, and disappeared before anyone could stop them. The Zarian Empire was no longer dealing with a single rogue vessel. They were facing an enemy that could strike anywhere, anytime, without warning. The age of human expansion into the galaxy had begun, and it had started with 30 humans on a ship called Liberty.